Miller from WhatCulture Wrestling here. Thank you very much for joining me once again for SmackDown Ups and Downs. But before we do get there, do I have the announcement for you? Because this Wednesday, the 17th of March at 4 p.m. ET or 8 p.m. GMT, if you do come here to WhatCulture Wrestling, we will be having a live stream with none other, and I'm not kidding, Intercontinental Champion Big E, as we promote his project, OurHeroesRock.org. It's an animated series that explores the heroes of black history through sci-fi and hip-hop, so go check it out now, see what it's all about, then come back here on Wednesday where, yes, me and Big E, we're going to be playing some video games, talking about what he's up to with this, and answering your questions. I mean, who would have ever thought that was true? But we've got a good few days before that, so instead let's take the other finger of power, because this one is broken, and give the good bits an up and the bad bits a down for the latest episode of WWE SmackDown. So we are definitely now teasing that Roman Reigns versus Edge may not be the WrestleMania main event, mostly because we have to try and turn Fastlane into a massive deal. And on the one hand, I don't mind this, but on my broken gammy hand, I kind of do. Because at this stage, we should know the main event for WrestleMania. It's flipping WrestleMania. And here it's going to be like the Saturday or the Friday. They go, oh, here's the match. You'll be like, great. Edge was back on SmackDown to kick things off, though, and he rightfully noted that Roman Reigns is a nut job. Because for weeks he was going, I want you, Edge, in the main event. Edge, you've got to fight me. You better pick me. Otherwise, I'm going to kill your entire family. And then from nowhere, he just pivoted to Daniel Bryan. The Rated R superstar wasn't just mad at our tribal chief, though. He also now hates Daniel Bryan, mostly because last week Daniel Bryan said that he loves wrestling more than Edge, and damn it, it's not true, and he's gonna let you know. Now, very sadly, Edge did the whole, oh, when you were on the indie scene, you were only wrestling one match a week, and I was here taking all these legends. I hate when people do that. Indie scene, great. WWE scene, great. As long as you're having a good time in between the ropes, who the flub cares? The point was, though, I can only assume, to start a feud between these two, and it worked. Because say his name and he shall appear, cue Daniel Bryan. He was far more balanced than Edge and said while he understands that the Rated R superstar had earned his shot in the main event at WrestleMania, this could be his last WrestleMania ever, so he's just not gonna take it lying down. And of course, Daniel was his usual lovable self here, but just to be completely honest with you, Edge, he was a little bit of a dick. Because after all this, he was still like, well, I don't like how you got into the title picture. And I was like, what? He got a match signed off by the general manager in a cage and he won? Oh yeah, Daniel Bryan, you terrible person. It ended with Edge telling DB that he doesn't think that he's a better wrestler than him. I was like, yeah, Edge, I know that. I mean, why would anybody assume that you thought otherwise? So it was a very different and interesting start to SmackDown, but also a very good one, and now I have absolutely no idea what the plan actually is. I mean, are we going to do a triple threat at WrestleMania 37? Or maybe you do one match on night one, and then the other match on night two like we did at Wrestle Kingdom? There's plenty of options, and options are good. But then, I mean, come on, man. I get that Otis is a bad guy now. I don't really know why he did this, but whatever his intentions are, good for him. Otis is allowed to do whatever the hell Otis wants to do. But just because he is on the heel side, do you know who he was teaming with here? None other than Dolph Ziggler, a guy in 2020 that tried to scupper his relationship with Mandy Rose and tried to ruin his friendship with Tucker. And that's like, oh, well, we're both villains. Why don't we just go lay in a bed? I don't know what that means. But how many times, WWE? Listen, I tell you once more, we are nerds. We remember everything. Please just you remember too, and don't do stuff like this, or just give us a sentence in the back when Otis is like, I don't like what you did to me, Dolph. That is not Otis. I don't like what you did to me, Dolph, but whatever, I got bigger fish to fry. Down. As for the match, though, it was very good. Up. Because Otis and Chad Gable were teaming with Bobby Roode and Dolph Ziggler to take on the Street Profits and the Mysterios, and I think we're meant to hate Ray and Dominic now, because Buddy Murphy went on his Instagram page and he told us the story between him and that family. And he said they kicked him to the curb, that Aaliyah only used him to try and get on TV. And I was like, Aaliyah, if that was your plan, why'd you pick Buddy Murphy? Sometimes he just vanishes from the TV. If you wanted to do that, you should have dated Roman Reigns. But if that is the case, and again, maybe Murphy is lying, How the hell could we like Ray and Dommy Boy? The bad guys jump the good guys though during their entrance to let you know that they are the bad people within this. And of course in the early going it was Dominic that was having his leg worked over before he busted out a tornado DDT and tagged in Angelo Dawkins. He ran wild, smashing out spine busters here and there. And when Montez Ford climbed to the top rope to do his splash, Bobby Roode pushed him off and he took such a horrible crumple to the floor. It did not look good. This led to another beatdown, this time of Ford, and he actually got a couple of tags in here, but the referee didn't see, because referees in wrestling are idiots, until we then got another hot tag, this time to none other than Rey Mysterio. And I swear, this man is like R-Truth. He just defies age. It also led to this team winning, and I was a little bit like, huh, because the Mysterios hit a double 619 onto Robert Roode, then Ford was back on top, he hit the splash, 1, 2, 3, and I suppose we did this because we're going to do the Street Profits versus the Dirty Dogs once again. Not 100% sure how I feel about that, but otherwise, this was decently fine and entertaining. Then man, poor Jey Uso, his brain continues to get wrecked by his cousin Roman Reigns. Now what I did appreciate here is this wasn't the stereotypical wrestling angle where Jey Uso walked up to Paul Heyman and said, oh man, I haven't talked to Roman all week, I need to talk to him now. I'd be like, how the hell would you go 7 days without sending a word to each other? But no, they had some correspondence a couple of days beforehand, but as Paul Heyman said, well, trust me, you don't want to talk to him now because it's TV day, and as ever, he has gone flipping bonkers. Thankfully, Uso had some things to do, so he excused himself as Paul said, well, that's good because Roman has a plan as well. And I was like, yeah, it's probably finding Jey Uso and cutting off his head and then putting it on his wall as some kind of piece of art. Because you know, Roman Reigns, he's going crazy. Seth Rollins was then being interviewed next. This guy, we got to do our recap. Because week 1, he was wearing a suit made of tears. Week 2, he was a rug. Week 3 turned into a cloud. Week 4, he was a pair of lips. And now in week 5, he is just a country garden. Seth Rollins has the best clothes game in the entire business. He kept this nice and simple too. He doesn't care about Cesaro at all, because that guy is nothing but a big waste of potential. And also, he tried to embarrass him a few weeks ago when he swung him round. As far as Seth Rollins is concerned, he can just kiss his ass. Kenna Braxton then told Rollins that we were going to do a round 2 of Murphy versus Cesaro later. And for some reason he loved this, and I didn't. I'm like, why are we doing that match again? Like, I'm happy to see it, because they're great wrestlers, but from a story perspective, it don't make no sense. I then could not believe what I was seeing. Genuinely, I could have sat down and guessed SmackDown segments for 68 years, and I would never have come up with this. I mean, if you wrote it down on a piece of paper to describe the scene, you would write, Nia Jax takes Reginald shopping, and that sounds like some kind of Rugrats episode. But in short, yes, Nia Jax had taken Reggie to buy some new clothes. She thought this was the greatest thing ever. Shayna Baszler thought it was the most boring thing ever. And when Reg found a suit that he liked, he did some kind of backflip into her lap and was like, oh, Nia, how am I ever going to repay you? And then sexy music played, and Nia was like, well, I bet I can think of a few ideas. So I suppose they're gonna bang in their new clothes. Who the hell asked for this? And who came up with this idea? It's so bizarre, it's so strange, and it's got to get it down. It was then Cesaro versus Murphy take 2, and look, like I said earlier, these people can't have bad matches, so it gets a very easy up. Seth was watching from the top of the stage, so he just knew he was going to do something at some point, so let's just jump to that moment, because you already know that Cesaro and Murphy tore it up. It's already been explained. But yeah, Rollins, after a little while, just decided he'd had enough of this. He jumped in, he attacked Cesaro, and he caused the disqualification. And now, actually, fair play to WWE, because I am tracking all their DQs throughout 2021. They haven't done one for weeks. In fact, I think the last one was all the way back on the 20th of February. So while the DQ counter does roll up to 15, they were actually quite reserved with it. So I ain't mad at that. This was a pretty decent beatdown too, because not only did Seth Rollins hit 2 curb stomps, but he was then going to get a chair, put Cesaro's head in it, and then stomp on that. And I was a bit like, wait a minute, Seth. So you're embarrassed that he swung you around for a bit, so your retaliation is, I'm gonna behead him. So you and Roman Reigns, you need to go and see someone and get some kind of help. That Shield really screwed you up. Seth also bumped into Shinsuke Nakamura backstage after this, and they had a brief stare down. I'm actually quite excited to see where this is gonna go. Maybe Shinsuke turns his back on Cesaro. Who the hell knows? But I'm giving it a tick. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens also bumped into each other backstage, and Sami was like, oh, Kevin, be in my documentary. It's gonna do 1 million billion views. And KO was like, well, I'll think about it, but first, I gotta go and host the Kevin Owens show. So he did. Edge was then being such a doofus. I mean, what was his deal on this episode? Because he found Jey Uso and basically went, listen, Jey, I think you're an absolute waste of space, and the fact that you listen to Roman Reigns over and over just proves my point. I was like, Edge, would you leave Jey Uso alone? He has enough stress in his life. I mean, look how tightly wound he is. He doesn't need you telling him off. Jey then got in his face and told him to go home and be a family man like he'd just beaten him in a game of Street Fighter. And you could just smell that we were going to have a matchup between these two at some point. Before the end of the day, we did. And then Kevin Owens was finally back on SmackDown. It's kind of a shame that he has been away for weeks, and at the moment he doesn't seem to have a program, but you could give KO anything, and he will make it work. Although saying that, his guests were Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, and I don't understand why we've decided to make Reginald so integral to their story. Because at first Kevin Owens was like, oh my gosh, at Fastlane you could become the tag team champions, and then it would be the tag team champions going at it at WrestleMania, like John Cena and Shawn Michaels once did, and what great company you would be keeping. But then they were like, oh, why are you hanging out with Reginald? Reginald's such a piece of crap. Reginald. I was like, what the hell is going on? I really like Reg, but he does not need to be the pivotal point of this. I mean, you can just keep it really simple. Sasha Banks, brilliant wrestler. Bianca Belair, brilliant wrestler. Oh, they're gonna have a fight. Who's gonna win? Sometimes that's enough. Now, we did get a little bit back on track when Sasha was like, hey, I'm the Michael Jordan of the division, and if you work really hard, maybe you'll be the LeBron James. So now you can go and have that debate as people always do. But yeah, Reginald, why Reginald? What I want though, much like Batista, is that this is just an angle for Fastlane, and when we do get out the other side, once again, we can just go back to basics, person versus person. Nia, Shayna, and Reggie then did interrupt because they wanted to watch the match that was about to happen, which was Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair taking on Tamina and There's Nobody Meaner and Natty. Where the hell did that come from? This was a step too far down. This was a bit of a mess too, because we barely focused on the match, and it was all about Reginald and Nia Jax and their budding relationship, and then just to give me a final slap round the face, it ended with a distraction. So to bring down the board, that is now 39. I mean, basically, Nia Jax and Reginald danced on the announce table, and that was too much for Bianca and Sasha, so Natalya snuck up behind Bianca Belair, the #1 contender, and used the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment to get the 1, 2, 3. So what the hell happens now? Banks and Belair then continued to argue that this was all because of Reginald before Sasha stormed off saying, you ain't nothing but a rookie. And surely, I mean, if I was Natalya and Tamina, There Is Nobody Meaner, I'd be like, well, can we now be put in this tag team match on Sunday? Because I think we just beat the #1 contenders. And you could not argue with that. Big E was then back on SmackDown, and yes, this is the same Big E that we're going to do that live stream with next Wednesday. I still can't quite believe it. Don't know how it happened, but hey ho, let's ride the horse all the way to Excited Town. And once again, he has just found the perfect balance between being silly and being serious. On this evening, he was being serious, and it was so damn flipping good. He was all bandaged up when he was making his way to the ring, but he threw all of that off to prove that he's over his wounds that Apollo Crews had caused. And he then cut such a vicious and such an intense promo on Crews that when it was done, I was a bit like, man, Big E, you better find that dastardly man and you better kill him. At one point he did say it's going to be an eye for an eye, and I froze a little bit because I was like, wait a minute, 12 months ago we did for an eye, and I can't go through all that again. But honestly, this could be one of the best promos that Big E has ever cut. If you are in the back and you are in a certain power position within WWE and you can't see that this man is money, well, you are also crazy like Roman Reigns. Then got even more crazy because Big E said he was happy to fight Apollo Crews right now, but of course that guy didn't show up. But Big E wanted to punch somebody in the face, so he offered an open challenge, and out came none other than Big Baron Corbin. He was all ready to start this match, but wanted to talk about his suit first. And as a quick side note, I actually quite like this, hey, look at my $10,000 clothes and look at all these cool rings and watches I wear. I think that should be the character that Baron transitions into now, because the King one is basically, well, it's had its shelf life, as all gimmicks do. And just before he was able to say, hey man, let's go, out came Sami Zayn, and he basically stole the opportunity. They then started to have a row, and Big E thought this was nonsense, so he was like, look, whoever gets in the ring first will be my challenger, and it was Sami Zayn that did get there first. So we had Big E versus Sami Zayn for the IC belt, and this was really good too. The only real issue with this is that you never truly believe that Sami Zayn was going to win, because taking the championship off Big E right now would be absolutely a huge mistake. Although when Zayn did hit a sunset bomb from the top and got a really close near fall, a tiny part of my tummy was like, oh, it got me just a little bit. He then decided to follow up by slapping Big E, and that was a really bad idea because he took his head off with a clothesline, smashed Sami Zayn with the big ending 1, 2, 3, and thankfully, yes, still your IC champ. This was really fun stuff though, and as soon as it was done, Apollo Crews' music hit, and he attacked Big E like the coward that he is. And not only did he smash him with 2 angle slams, but he got the steel steps again and just chucked him right into Big E's head. This thing is definitely personal. Crews is just awesome in this role, and Big E gets better and better every week. And while this match was announced for Fastlane, I actually hope we do get some shenanigans so we can do it again on a bigger stage, aka WrestleMania. This is flippin' faboo. Reginald then convinced Nia Jax to face Sasha Banks on SmackDown next week for her women's title. And I was like, what the flub is going on? Like, at least put Adam Pearce in this position to say, hey man, I think it's a really good idea. But no, and Nia Jax, she does have justification for this, because over the last 2 weeks she has pinned Sasha Banks and she's pinned Asuka. But why is Reginald now in this position, and why have I said Reginald so many times during this show? Like, if we could all do this, why doesn't Drew McIntyre say, hey Bobby Lashley, you screwed me out of my championship, why don't we have a contest? And I tell you the reason, because WWE would never do it. Down. And contract signing was the way we were going to end our night too, and while WWE does do this a lot, they have a justification when it comes to SmackDown, because if Roman Reigns is in it, he will always go, excuse me, there's no chair at the head of the table, because he is a literal goofball. He also just decided that he didn't want to have a match with Daniel Bryan anymore, so he wasn't going to sign this contract like a child that doesn't want to eat his vegetables. But then Daniel Bryan, the hero and the legend that he is, not only got so hyped and going like, I want the match, but he started saying, maybe I'm the head of the table, maybe I'm the tribal chief, maybe I'll go into your family's house, but hey dudes, look how cool I am. And it wound Roman Reigns up so much, he signed on the dotted line. This could be the best thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Talk about mind games. Crazy Jey Uso then threw the table out of the way, and honestly, I love this version of Jey Uso because he's just so mad all of the time, and he was like, man, I'm tired of this disrespect, and I think I should be the special enforcer for your match at Fastlane. Then you could just smell that Edge was about to come out, which he did, and he was like, no, I'm gonna be the special guest enforcer at Fastlane. I was like, what the? Who? Special? Why? What it all came down to though, thankfully sanctioned by Adam Pearce, who was in the ring, is that next week on SmackDown, Edge is going to have his first match on this brand in over 10 years when he does take on Jey Uso, and the winner becomes the special guest enforcer. And that's a little bit out of left field, but I actually kind of dig it, because once again you're like, well, is he going to screw Roman? Is he going to screw Daniel? What the hell he's going to do? Because I'm presuming here that Edge does win that and becomes a special guest enforcer. A massive brawl broke out, and as you know, I love these, especially because it ended with Daniel Bryan looking at Edge and going, well, you don't like me, so I don't like you, and he ran at him and kneed him in the face. So I can't lie, that got me, and now I'm completely confused about whether we are going to do a triple threat at WrestleMania 37, but I suppose this is the best way to do it if you do have that stupid Fastlane stuck in the middle of everything. And I'm very excited to see what we're going to do, and that's all I ever need. And I do admit that if Daniel Bryan wasn't in this, it may be a little bit of a problem, but Daniel Bryan is in it. So there's people that go, this Batman game wouldn't be very good without Batman. He's flipping in it, man. I'm looking at him, and therefore up. Which did then bring us to the end of another episode of SmackDown, and I can't help it. Somebody on the internet the other day said, Miller, you're biased towards SmackDown over Raw. I don't even know how you can do that. They are written by the same people. I just think it has a lot of good momentum now, and we have some really good characters that evolve smartly week in, week out. What are you gonna do? I'm giving it up. Now don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of SmackDown. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. The button is right there. Head over to WhatCulture.com where you can read yourself some miles, click some videos around my head to stay on the channel, and you can go follow us on social media. My name is Simon from WhatCulture. Thank you as always for watching. I do appreciate your time, and don't forget this coming Wednesday, it's me, it's Big E, but more importantly, it's you, and it's your questions for the big man. I will see you then.